Hello, this is part two of your revision for your exams for all the students of BEO 1105. And in this particular video, I'll be covering up the most important key points for macroeconomics for you. I hope it facilitates your revision and you can do a good exam based on that. So let's get started. The very first one, the first topic that relates to the macroeconomic section is relating to the GDP. Commonly, uh, a question on the very definition of GDP can always be there, and you must understand as to what is GDP, which is the market value of final goods and services produced in an economy within a given period of time, say 1 year. Now, you must remember the two important words when it comes to the definition of GDP, that is the gross domestic product. It relates to the market value. That means uh, when you're measuring the GDP at current prices, that is, in other words, the nominal GDP of the final goods and services. Remember the word final goods. Intermediate goods are nothing but the producer goods, but when it comes to the final goods, these are the goods that are used or that are consumed by the final consumer. So this is what GDP is. And definitely, you must remember that this is basically a quantitative measure. It's not a qualitative measure. And that is also one of the limitations of GDP. What are the three methods of calculating GDP? Just remember, there are three ways. And for that, you'll have to definitely remind yourselves with the whole circular flow that we have done earlier. So there are mainly three methods: income method, expenditure method, and the value added method. So expenditure method, as the word itself is saying, expenditure of all the different sectors, that is the consumption plus the investment plus government spending and the net exports. When it comes to the income method, it is all about the income. You know the different factors of production, the land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So you know that the labor gets wages, land gets rent, capital gets interest, and the enterprise gets profits. So the wages or plus rent plus interest plus profit, that is the total income, is also used to calculate the GDP value. And there is third one that is called the value added approach, wherein you actually take into consideration either the final value of the goods and services or the value added at each stage of production. Now, this is one of the most important sections of this particular topic. That is the topic on week 7 GDP. It relates to the shortcomings of GDP as to why GDP is not a very perfect measure of economic welfare. And as you can see, it does not include the non-market transactions, because what if people produce something for self-consumption and it does not reach the market? And that is where the GDP is underestimated. Similarly, the distribution and the quality of products, definitely when it comes to GDP, it's just a quantitative measure. What has been the total output, irrespective of what the quality of it is or how equitably it is being distributed. Also, when it comes to GDP, the same fact, it is a quantitative measure and thus it ignores or neglects the leisure time. It does neglect the social costs, or in other words, the negative externalities, and also it does not take into account the the underground economy. Underground economy here is meaning and that's a very common trend in many developing countries, wherein people work just on cash, and that means they do not pay the taxes, and that means the income is not counted in, and there is illegal sales. So all that part is also part of it's not considered as a part of GDP, but definitely that is underestimating GDP. So also to overcome the main fact or the drawback in terms of the nominal GDP as an estimate, that is the GDP at current prices, we look at the real GDP. And what is real GDP? The real GDP is the GDP at constant prices. That's same price level, base level prices as we call it, constant dollar GDP. Now, why is this important? Real GDP is definitely important because uh, the real GDP is the one that actually is used for comparison instead of the nominal GDP, primarily because it accounts for the changes in the inflation as in the price level, and also it is the real GDP per capita that is used as the measure of social welfare. Although, again, real GDP per capita is not the perfect one because, again, it is an average, on an average, what people earn. So there are still more measures for finding out the economic well-being and the social well-being of the people through the Human Development Index. But as long as you know these bits, they should suffice for answering a good question at your end. Our GDP is used to show economic growth or decline of measure or measure the business cycle fluctuations. So it is any increase. If the question is what is economic growth, it is actually just the increase in real GDP. So again, real GDP is the main measure to estimate economic growth, to find out um, the state of the business cycle fluctuations, to find out the per capita income. And this is where real GDP per capita is more important. And the most important aspect, as you know it, I've already mentioned it a number of times in the class, real is here relating to accounting for inflation, and thus it is a more realistic measure of the purchasing power of the people there. So this is it. The next topic is relating to the business cycles and the economic growth. And from this topic, one of the common ones that always is often seen is definitely a straight question, that is as to what the business cycles are, and explain the different phases of business cycle. I can just quickly take you through on the key concepts of through this itself. So business cycles, as you have done before, they're just the uh, inherent up and down, upswings and the downswings in an economy. So business cycles are like the roller coaster ride. Sometimes the economies expand by default and then they contract by default. And the reason, I have explained it very much in detail before to you, how injections and the leakages make a difference. So when the injections are more than the leakages, and what are the three injections? Can you all recollect? The three injections were investment, government spending, and the exports. These were the three injections. So if the injections are more than the withdrawals, and what were the withdrawals? You remember that were savings, taxes, and imports. So if injections are more than withdrawals, the economy expands, and if the withdrawals are more than injections, the economy contracts. So if you can recollect, some of you who have been with me in my lectures, the idea of the balloons and the other lecture series, if you would look at the YouTube, you would know what I'm talking of. And the business cycles, this is a typical roller coaster ride. As you can see, this is the upswing and downswing. And the phases you should be able to discuss in detail. Upswing, easiest way of remembering, more or less everything is going up, GDP is going up, income levels, in other words, are going up, market activity is going up, employment is going up, and more so even the price level is going up. So this is typically what happens in an upswing. And downswing, practically more or less everything is going down here. Income levels are going down, the general number of hours worked is going down. Inflation also actually goes down in this phase, and this is how these phases have to be explained. You should be able to talk about all these uh, in detail, so you must learn these basics. But I've just given you a little trick how to remember. Upswing is practically more or less everything going up other than unemployment, and downswing is everything going down other than unemployment, because unemployment goes up in that situation. And back to a couple more. And then there were business cycle indicators. Before I say about the business cycle indicators, the business cycle and its impact on durable and non-durable industries. This is one of the, again, very short answer question. Normally it comes for 2 marks or so. So durable goods, you know it. I mean, it's a very simple, you don't really have to memorize the concepts there. You can remember the idea. You know what the durable goods are. The first thing maybe you may want to consider at home, a refrigerator or a washing machine is a durable good, right? And a non-durable good is like your day-to-day consumption needs, and your fruits and vegetables, let's say, for that matter. So think it logically. what things can you defer if there was a business cycle, if there was a downswing or if there was an upswing? What is the thing that you can defer or postpone a purchase of? Goes without saying, durable goods. Durable goods you can, because you can take it later, or whereas when it comes to the non-durable goods, your day-to-day goods, they are really very less affected by the business cycles, but the durable goods are affected more, as I've said, because you can defer or you can postpone or the purchases of these goods, and they last longer. The business cycle indicators, do you remember the idea that I had given you? Business cycle indicators were, uh, what was it? The lightning, rainfall, and the rainbow. Remember? The symptoms, the actual problem, and the side effects. Another analogy was this. Okay, in terms of the economics terms, you can remember the idea of leading, coincident, and lagging indicators. So leading, coincident, the word itself is telling you coincident at the time of, and the lagging, that is the indicators that come after the cycle. The ones that are of planning value are definitely the leading and the coincident indicators. And then was the economic growth. Simplest way of remembering economic growth is nothing but increase in real GDP of an economy. And again, the differences between the real GDP and real GDP per capita, and the goals of macroeconomic policy. So these are some of the key concepts that you would be assessed on. And the most important, as I've already discussed, business cycles you should understand. Economic growth we have got in here. Economic growth I have already given you on a very basic note. Real GDP is the inflation adjusted GDP, and the determinants of growth. When you talk about GDP, is the market value of final goods and services. So when you're saying final goods and services, is nothing, in other words, it is the total, it's the value of the output of the economy, right? So when you say the value of the output, now go from the microeconomics point of view. When can you increase the supply? When can you increase the output? Goes without saying again, when you can have increase in resources, land, labor, capital, these are all resources, right? Or there is an advancement in technology. These are some of the reasons straight on which you can always quote as a determinant of economic growth. Output per unit of labor is increasing. What does that mean? Naturally, quantity of capital per unit of labor is increased, or there is better technology that's available, and alongside if there is, better savings such that the investment is possible. Economic growth in real GDP per capita. We have already discussed this in the earlier one also. Increase in real GDP over time. It measures the increase in the sizes of the economy, as well as if there is an increase in GDP per capita, that also means that people are being better off because they would have more resources or more income to be able to spend. GDP gap. GDP gap, simplest way of remembering the two keywords. Gap is between the potential and actual. So if you had to think of what an economy is capable of producing and what it actually produces, the difference between the two is the GDP gap. You could even refer to this if a question comes on GDP gap. Not only you can write down this equation, but you can again just draw back the business cycle figure, and this is actual and this is potential. That's the way you look at it. So the difference between the two is your GDP gap. And moving on with this further, besides the GDP gap concept, economic growth in the production possibility frontier. Yes, this is again a question that can come sometimes worth 4 to 5 marks. And so the term production possibility frontier or production possibility curve, it's just the same. And you can make a definition from the word itself, from the term itself. As we said, production means what? Output. Possibilities is the word as it is what an economy is capable of, and frontier is the model. So what does a PPC show? A PPC basically shows the maximum possible output that an economy can produce with the given resources and technology at a given time. So the maximum possible output that an economy can produce with the given resources, technology at a given time. Definitely given the fact that you're using up all the resources to the fullest possible potential. And then any point in, I have given you the example on this in class, but you may want to refer to your lecture slides and see how opportunity cost keeps increasing. As we want to produce more, we have no option but to give up of the other goods because the resources are limited. So here it is. Oh, this graph has got distorted, people, on my slides, but maybe I can draw another one here. So the simplest way of getting hold of it is if an economy can produce, all right, this is, so you can write down goods and services, goods on one side, services on other. So if an economy can produce, let's say, 200 of goods or 200 million or trillion, whatever way you can take it up, or 300 of services. So either it can produce 200 or 300 or a point on or a combination of any of this. I mean, if this is the maximum that you can produce, again, can you produce anything more than this? Maybe not, but you can produce anything less than this. When you produce less than this, it is inefficient. When you produce more than this, it is when you produce, sorry, you cannot actually produce more than this unless you have more resources to be able to produce more. So regretfully, this figure is distorted. So ignore this. I would say just refer to your lecture notes for the PPC as a concept and learn it well. You can also refer to my lecture notes if the need be. There is a very short lecture on PPF also on YouTube. So anyways, economic growth and the PPF. So this is another way of illustrating the economic growth. A complete shift of the PPC is showing that there is a total economic growth. Economic growth is actually, can be actual or potential. So a complete shift of the PPC is in principle a potential economic growth. And the next topic that you need to really remember and understand is the inflation and unemployment. This topic is pretty lengthy as well, so I will try and quickly take you through on very brief note on the first key concept slide itself. So you do know what is inflation. Remember the term inflation is any increase, sustained increase in price level, general price level on an average over a period of time. So the meaning of inflation, remember, increase. Inflation essentially means an increase in price level. It does not mean decrease in price level. Often people mistake it in terms of if the inflation rate goes down, they say, hey, the prices have gone down. Not really. The criticism of the how it is measured through the consumer price index. Now again, a simple word meaning definition, consumer price index just indicates the changes in the price level of the consumer goods and services. That's the way you could remember. And the consequences of inflation, I'm not quite sure how much will I be able to cover up practically for everything in terms of your revision, people, but here it is, the inflation. It is an increase in general price level. You should know this definition. Consumer price index I've already given you. How it measures the changes in the average prices of basket of goods that are consumed by an average household. And this is the easiest way of calculating it. So let's say last year, the basket of goods was costing me about 245, but this year, if it is costing me 335, the main idea is definitely, in other words, that the prices have gone up, which is why the same basket of goods, mind you, the goods, the quantity of the goods is kept constant here. It is only exactly the same basket of goods you're buying this year, and this is what exactly you were buying the earlier year. So earlier if it was costing you 245, and this year if it's costing you 335, it simply means that the prices have gone up. And as you can see here in this particular slide, how the prices have changed, and thus there is inflation. Rate. Remember, the word rate is basically relating to the gradient, to what extent the change is, by how much is the word, in other words. So the CPI of a given year minus the previous year by the previous year times 100 gives you the inflation rate. And that's the common term that you hear, that the inflation rate is 2% or 3%. So nominal and real income, again, inflation as in the increase in price level, always has an effect in terms of your purchasing power. And that is why the word real, you can always remember the term real, something that has been adjusted for inflation. Because you have got real income, you've got real interest rate, a lot of terms, and real GDP, pretty much everything being adjusted for inflation. That is the changes in the price level. So if your nominal income is 100,000 and if there was inflation of up to 5%, definitely, in other words, your nominal income is worth only 95,000 in this situation. And that's the way you've got to look at it. Inflation and real income. Again, if the inflation is high, because if you want to work out the percentage change in real income, that is percentage change in nominal minus the change in inflation. That's a very simple mathematical equation for any details. So if nominal income is increasing by 5%, and if inflation is, nominal income is increasing by 5%, and if inflation is increasing by 6%, do you think you're better off or worse off? You would be definitely worse off. So if you just know this very basic math, there should be no issues in terms of answering any question on the effect of an anticipated and unanticipated inflation. So if you're anticipating an inflation of, let's say, 5%, but the real inflation actually happened to be 6%, there's every chance that you might lose, because you would be trying to, your income level is just going up based on the anticipated inflation. So that is another aspect you may want to consider. As I said, again, real interest rate, the same concept every time. The moment you see the word real, it is relating to the inflation that has got to be adjusted through it. Inflation, what are the causes? Back to microeconomics, you can remember the price of a good can go up only in two situations. Situation one, if there is an increase in demand or there is a decrease in supply. So pretty much on that principle, if you really see this demand pull, the question has the answer. If the question doesn't have demand pull or cost push explicitly, and it asks you what are the causes of inflation, just remember two reasons. One, increase in demand. And why is this demand increasing? This is aggregate demand. That's the difference. It is macroeconomics, you may want to remember. And what does this aggregate demand comprise of? Aggregate demand was equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So if there is an increase in any of these factors, if the consumption level increases or investment increases or the government spending increases or the net exports increase, any of these would mean an increase in aggregate demand, and they can lead to the demand pull inflation. That is, the price level can go up should there be an increase in aggregate demand, especially if the economy is close to full employment level. Cost push, the word itself is again telling cost relates to supply, and therefore a decrease in aggregate supply leads to the cost push inflation. Now the word cost, what are the costs? Costs can be increase in wages, increase in the price of raw materials, or increase in price of equipments, increase in price of crude oil. Any of those things, as in like supply shock, can lead to decrease in aggregate supply because of the increase in costs of production. So these are the two reasons for inflation. You have done that. You have done it before. Even in micro, you would remember it: increase in demand or decrease in supply. How else can you remember the diagrams? Let me just see if I can get a whiteboard on this. Otherwise, I'll try and annotate on this itself. Just a sec. Here we are. Yes. So, sorry, there. So When you talk about the demand pull, you have done demand. This is your aggregate demand. And just you got to draw the aggregate supply curve here. This is the CPI, real GDP, and demand pull. So when you say demand pull, this is the demand curve, pull, demand pull, inflation. So you can see that the price level has gone up, P1. And if you were to talk of cost push, same thing, you have got aggregate supply, aggregate demand, and then so cost pushes, cost push. You can see the push is this way. So here you go. This is AS1, and this is again the prices have gone up. This is typically you can show the demand pull and cost push. This is cost push, and this is demand pull. And then is I'll get back to the slide here. So demand pull, cost push, inflation. Now unemployment, yes, very basic question at times can come in as to what you understand by the term unemployment. So you may want to know the definitions very clearly, and you must try and remember that. And the labor force participation rate. Now, what is participation rate? It is primarily the number of people who are employed or unemployed in the total workforce. So again, looking at this little Venn diagram, if I have to put it up, oh no, this is not coming up here nicely. So let's say there are 200 people in this economy. Remember, about 120 are employed, maybe 60 are unemployed, and here 20 are neither employed nor unemployed. Now, remember, when it comes to finding out the participation rate, you just take into consideration these two, employed plus unemployed, that is 180 divided by 200. Now, why is this participation rate important? What kind of questions can you get on this? If I say that in my economy, I have created, in this particular scenario only, let's say that in this case, if I say that I have created 70 jobs, yeah, if I've created 70 jobs in my economy, do you think there can be a chance of having unemployment still? What would you be answer? Yes, there is a possibility of unemployment still, even if I have created 70 new jobs in this economy. The reason being that there can be people moving from this side, or there could be new people joining in the workforce. And that is where the participation rate is very important whenever you're interpreting the employment or unemployment statistics. So what it means is that even if an economy has had more number of jobs, if its participation rate is increasing alongside, yes, there is a possibility of unemployment still continuing. The different types of unemployment: seasonal, frictional, structural, and cyclical. Seasonal, the word itself is telling you season based jobs. So people are unemployed because of the changes in the season. So ski trainers are better employed in winters, swimming trainers are better employed in summers. Frictional, remember the frictional with your fresher. You as a fresh graduate would take some time to get a job, or maybe people are moving between jobs, and that is there again, they would be unemployed. So frictional. Structural, two words, skill mismatch. So people who are unemployed because of skill mismatch. What does that mean? That the economy is undergoing through a transition in terms of primary to secondary sector, or secondary to tertiary sector. That's one way of looking at it. Maybe there is a better technology that has come in place, or there is a complete change in the taste and preferences of the people, such that the goods that are being produced are different. So naturally, that would mean people into that existing industry would be unemployed, and they would be unemployed. And till they acquire the required skills, they are temporarily unemployed. Remember, these three types of unemployment is always there in any economy. But cyclical, again, the word itself is reminding you of the business cycle. So this is the unemployment that is caused during the business cycles, and it is not present all the time. So these are all the times, but cyclical is not all the time, and it is only during the business cycle. And thus, at full employment level, an economy still has seasonal, frictional, and structural unemployment. So full employment does not mean zero unemployment. Remember this. It is the level of employment where there is no cyclical unemployment. That's the bottom line. The last one, money and monetary policy. So often there is a question worth 3 marks. That's a very, very easy pick as to what is money or what are the functions of money. And then normally on monetary policy, it should be about 5 marks, 5 to 7 marks. Sometimes they ask you some terminology to explain, as in the what is cash rate, what is exchange settlement account, or what is OMO, and so forth. So, anyways, I'll just quickly take you through what is money. So you do know what is money. It is the money is anything that um, does money is what money does, rather. I just missed on that definition by Crowther. Yes, it says money is what money does. And it serves a number of functions. The most important ones, the three key functions, that is the medium of exchange. Easy to explain, the word exchange itself, if you take into consideration, when people exchange goods and services in terms of money, it serves the function of medium of exchange. Money is also a measure of account or measure of value, as you said, unit of account or measure of value. Simple word. When you're pricing the goods and services in terms of money, it serves the function of measure of value. And store of value, when you save money for future, right? And that is where it serves the function of store of value. And definitely to perform these functions, money has to have certain features. And what are those features? It must be portable, it must be uniform, it must be divisible, it must be durable, and it must be scarce. So those are the specific features that anything to perform the role of money must possess. And goes without saying, most of these functions are performed. Features are actually in the current type of money that we talk of, and money does perform all these functions. But remember, money does not, the current form of money also does not perform this function well, because the savings, the value of your savings would erode over the time with inflation. And another important thing you may want to remember, that credit money, or as we call it, the credit cards. Credit cards are not money. Many times people think credit card is money. No, it is not money. Why is it not money? Because it lacks the feature of acceptability. People can decline in accepting the credit card payments. So yes, uh, that is what it is. And the next one is, sorry for the interruptions, folks. There was a call on this. Um, and the next one, I need to take you through the. Yeah, there is more to it. If you need to do the rest of the concepts, I would strongly recommend you to revise through on the monetary policy as well as the fiscal policy. It'll be good if you could just click on these links. I've posted detailed, about 15 minutes of a lecture on monetary policy. I strongly recommend you to go through it so that it'll be better for you in terms of being able to prepare for the exam. And I reckon this is it from my side for your exam revision. Wish you all the best. All I would say is I strongly, just believe in yourselves and give your best go. I'll follow your passion and believe in yourself. I say it again. Uh, Focus on your strengths and work on your weaknesses. Learn it well. All the best.